Welcome to part 2 of this review on Dance and the Vampire Bund. Now, if I remember correctly, we just finished off on an attack on students from thin-blooded vampires to be saved by Princess Mina, and how it's totally okay to trust Princess Mina now, because she saved us from a bunch of vampires. I don't expect you guys to immediately agree with me on this, but that makes me even more suspicious of Princess Mina. It really doesn't help that suddenly there's this whole new breed of vampires, which Mina cannot just order around due to blood bonds. Especially since in this story, every blood bond that a vampire has leads back to the Trepp family line, which is why Mina can command everyone. There's all these vampires that somehow don't have the innate need to serve her every wish. The fact that she came in at the nick of time also draws a lot of suspicion on how much she knew about this situation, and why this fight wasn't stopped earlier. Of course, because Akira threw himself to save Mina, this obviously means they're in love, and not that Akira has been conditioned since birth to give his life for the princess. Because Akira saved her life, he is now completely trusting of her again, and Mina will never be held responsible for this entire situation, even though she claimed herself as ruler of all vampires, and is therefore responsible for them. Also, for some strange reason because of this fight, Yuri and Mina are now besties, and completely ignoring the fact that Mina is wearing, the ring that Yuri gave to her boyfriend Akira, the werewolf we're dealing with, who was her boyfriend, that she's stealing violently. I must have really high expectations, because my hopes are very too high on Mina being held accountable for anything. However, this scene does tie together the first and second acts pretty smoothly. The second act I don't have much to talk about. The entire situation here is that we're now going after the thin-blooded vampires, and it's a freaking fighting anime all of a sudden. There's two things you need to know from this part. The first part is Nanami's life sucks as a vampire, which I think might just be better done in that Twilight Spooner, the Unlife of Bree Tanner or something. Once again, I don't follow vampire stuff. Don't expect me to know about Twilight. The second part of this act is Akira finally joining the other werewolves in military operations against these vampires, which makes some sense considering how the werewolves are constructed in this series. But it comes at a cost of the world exploration and the fact that we just got rid of our outside viewpoint for this series. Also, the plot between Akira and Mina stops being a concern of, can I trust this person, and instead goes into the fact that Mina is immortal and Akira is not. There's some forced allegory about a butterfly falling in love with a flower or something in here too. And this all comes from one of the most interesting characters in the series, which I haven't been talking about much, because honestly she might have the most interesting plot and I don't want to spoil that for anyone who's actually interested in watching this. Sadly, she isn't in the series more, instead just becoming Akira's proto-man pretty much, and gets no character development. Skip to the final battle for this arc, and we see one of the most important things about this series. This thin-blooded faction intends on suicide bombing the subway system for the city, to show humans that they still need to be afraid of vampires, which they should, because vampires are natural predators. The other werewolves are having an easy time dispatching all these vampires, while Akira chases after one of his classmates, which he always protected because he was being bullied, who apparently joined the Thin Bloods because he wanted his own strength and becoming a vampire comes with stat boosts. And then he has a crisis because he realizes that even as a vampire he's still a wimp, and then proceeds with the suicide bombing. Elsewhere, Mina is fighting the boss of all these vampires, who has no reason to be disobeying Mina. This boss's sire is Mina's personal maid. That's 2 steps from the Trepp's line. She shouldn't be able to refuse a trip to the tanning salon at that point. So anyways, this is solved by fighting in Mina's advanced form again, and through some paper-thin excuse, Nanami is now blood-bound to Mina directly, negating all previous binds, and reuniting her with a young boy who started off this entire plotline to finding her. They come together in what I'm sure is going to be a beautiful sign of platonic brotherly sisterly love, and they make out. This series is very pressing against the boundaries of good taste, aren't they? Thankfully, this ends the second act and sends us into the third act. In this, the three noble lords of the vampires, who politically are directly under Mina, have come together and decided now would be a wonderful time to settle their little disputes over who's going to marry her. Not just marry, procreate with her. Completely glossing over the entire idea of vampires procreating, we're going to talk about the bet. The entire bet is that they sent out their own assassins to go after Akira. Based on the assassin that comes in with Akira's head, the nobleman who hired him wins. Remember, guys, the way to impress a girl is to kill their puppy. So Akira now has to face off against assailants, while memories coming back to him about the reason why he had his memory wiped to begin with. Unlike the mystery girl I was talking about earlier, I have no problem talking about this. There's a lot of Minas running around. There is apparently a cloning project at some point in time. The fact that there may be more than one Mina would throw the entire vampire society into chaos. This, of course, is the plot hook for the next season that will never come out. You want to know how I know there isn't going to be a second season? To pass the time, the nobles decide that Mina needs to go under a purity exam. What this is an examination to see if she is still pure of body to give a proper heir. So in front of three old men, the princess of all the vampires that everyone answers to has her dress ripped off her, she's tossed onto some stirrups, and then has a gynecology exam performed on her while these three old men watch. This is considered the low point of this series. It was bad enough that apparently Mina had an allergy to all natural and synthetic fibers, and that she flat out took baths in front of Akira just because it was fun squicking him out. This is just outright perversion. It's three older men predating on a significantly younger woman who is in the body of a 10-year-old. And this is used as the climax of the series. And it can't be that this is to show some weakness on Mina's part, because after that part, she coolly threatens those three, as soon as the dawn came, to open up the windows and dust the lot of them, with like 50 werewolves sitting in the rafters. While on the other hand, you could have just had an extermination order on these three people because they clearly have been overthrowing the other 10 clan heads and driving your freaking mother off the throne to die in obscurity. And the entire gynecology thing is an elongated scene that has no point aside from three old men dominating a 10-year-old girl and making her strip and spread her legs for them. But honestly, I saw this coming because I know that this is one of the thinnest veiled lolicon series in existence. What I can't forgive is that after the incident in the chapel, this anime turns into a shonen fighting series. Those fighting anime are for young boys. This is supposed to be a vampire drama political intrigue kind of thing, with some romance aspects tossed in. You can carry a storyline in that without having to have a fight every episode. It's almost insulting that a series that takes itself this seriously doesn't take its viewers that seriously. Also, there's so many questions that need to be answered here. Why does Akira blindly follow Mina? Why is Mina doing things despite the rest of the vampire race? Why is it Japan? Why is it only Japan that is reacting to these vampires? Why haven't we heard about human-based vampire execution squads? In fact, why is humanity fine with there being vampires running around when they're our natural predator? Instead of answering these questions, the series jangles keys in our face. Keys in Mina's ass! This series gives us nothing on the universe, even glazing over most characters' motivations in doing things, and then expects to have a second series handed to it on a silver platter, making the entire last part about what would be revealed in the next season. I honestly feel embarrassed that I defended this series when it first came out to people, because apparently they were the ones who were right the entire time. If you want to watch this series, it's produced by Funimation and you can find it on Netflix without much trouble. Though honestly, I would suggest against it, especially if you're a fan of most other vampire series or political dramas, as this is a terrible inversion of both.